6 children disappeared in one night. No witnesses. Not a sound. Just a table set for a meal and still warm silverware. In the Argentine village of Coramoro, a legend persists, passed down in whispers by the elders. The house of Luján should never have been awakened. Yet, in 1994 it was. And since then, those who approach it never return, or never return at all. It's not a haunted house. It's a living memory. A hungry memory. On June 6, 1994 at dawn, a mailman knocked on Luján's door, as he did every Monday. No one answered. He waited, hesitated, and finally placed the letter in the rusty box. But looking out the window, he felt something strange. The curtains were trembling, even though there was no wind. 2 hours later, alerted by a neighbor who claimed not to have seen the children in several days, 2 police officers entered the house. What they discovered left a lasting impression on them. A table still set for 7, plates full, soup still frozen from the cold, as if the meal had been interrupted mid-act. A chair was overturned, and a fork was stuck in the floor, as if thrown with inhuman force. All the cabinets were closed. No sign of a struggle. No blood. No external fingerprints. And yet, person. Every room seems untouched, frozen in a familiar yet deeply disturbing scene. The living room is bathed in dim light, and an old radio emits a crackling sound reminiscent of a heartbeat. On the walls, the picture frames are all tilted slightly, as if something has moved through the house, without touching the objects, but leaving its mark. The smell is strange, metallic, with a hint of burnt wood. And in the kitchen, the clock has stopped at 3:17. The minute hand seems crooked, as if it's struggling to keep ticking. No animals, not even the family puppy, are present. There's not a single toy nearby. No notes. No cries. Nothing. The police searched the basement, but they only went down a few steps before returning, pale-faced, refusing to discuss what they saw. The official report concluded it was an unexplained disappearance, with no signs of forced entry or escape. But the photos taken that day were never released, and all the officers present at the scene requested transfers in the following months. For some, it wasn't just an empty house. It was a trap that closed after he had swallowed what he wanted. While inspecting the living room, one of the agents discovers an object that, at first glance, seems harmless. A simple rag doll, placed on the armchair near the fireplace. But upon approaching, something immediately strikes the eye. The texture of the fabric is stiff, as if frozen. The cotton is slightly oozing, impregnated with a shiny substance. Turning it over, the agent smells warm wax mixed with a pungent perfume, a scent he will never forget. However, no candles were found in the room. No candlesticks. And no trace of fire or soot. It's as if the doll had melted inside without external heat. The doll belonged to the youngest, Clara, 5 years old. A toy she never gave up, according to neighbors. But the most shocking thing is that her button eyes, once securely sewn shut, are now missing. Torn out. And in their place, 2 tiny fingerprints, as if very small fingers had pressed them in. The fireman assigned to examine the room lingers for a moment before the doll's sewn-up mouth. He will say later, his throat dry, "I heard children's voices, but they were coming from inside the fireplace." While inspecting the ventilation ducts, one of the technicians refused to continue after only a few meters. He said he saw something crawling behind the metal, in reverse motion, like an insect, but with a childlike figure. The pipe is dismantled. Inside, we find strands of hair tied together, caught in a child's shoelace, burned at one end. Some experts suggest a coincidence. Accelerated decomposition. Others speak of a ritual act, a morbid performance. But it's not the wax that's most disturbing. It's what one of the investigators hears as he leaves the house. Just before closing the front door, he swears he heard. The doll calls him by his first name. An elderly neighbor, Donna Morales, claims, without a shadow of a doubt, to have seen the children playing in the yard 2 days after their supposed disappearance. She even says she heard Clara, the youngest, singing an old lullaby she didn't know, but whose words seemed to remain etched in her head like a painful echo. When the earth sleeps, the blood breathes. When the earth sleeps, the blood breathes. But according to police records, this would have been impossible. The first signs of eviction date back at least 8 days. And all municipal services confirm this. There's no electricity, no water, and no movement detected by the neighborhood streetlights. A highway worker adds a layer of strangeness. He claims to have seen shadows passing through the windows, while the curtains were closed. He said nothing at the time, fearing ridicule. But this strange detail surfaces in other testimonies, all incoherent, disjointed, as if time itself no longer followed his laws in this house. One of the detectives responsible for the crime scene, Valeria Soto, abandoned the investigation 3 days after her first visit without explanation. She began having nighttime panic attacks, talking to herself and withdrawing. She whispered nonsensical phrases to those nearby. They were there. They weren't moving. But they knew I saw them. One night she called her sister crying, repeating, "There's someone on the stairs. He's been there for 3 nights. He doesn't go up. He doesn't come down. He's watching." When her colleagues went to see her the next day, they found all the windows in her apartment covered with black sheets and a single message scrawled on a mirror in white chalk. "It's not a house. It's an eye." This sentence becomes an obsession for those who read it, because the more researchers try to understand, the more they realize that no nearby cameras are capturing it, anything around Luján's house. The images freeze. The sound blurs. And the neighborhood dogs flatly refuse to approach, pulling at their leashes or running away for no apparent reason. Something is disturbing us. But it's a malaise we can't name. A distortion. A passive but invasive presence, as if the air itself were holding its breath. As if the house were waiting. 2 weeks after the children's disappearance, tension in the village is unbearable. Rumors spread. Some say the earth around the house is sick, that it trembles slightly at night, that it resonates for no reason. Others claim the silences in the house are too heavy, almost alive. Then, without warning, a discovery abruptly changes the atmosphere. The body of Magdalena Luján, the grandmother, is found in the old stable, about 100 meters from the house. But this is no simple hanging. The scene is a macabre enigma. She is not hanging by the neck, but by the wrists, suspended between 2 beams as if crucified upside down. Her legs almost touch the ground, but they don't rest on it. Her body seems frozen in grotesque tension, as if she's been slowly lifted alive. No blood, no bruises. And yet her face is unrecognizable, entirely covered in black cloth, sewn directly to her skin with rusty thread. Each stitch pierces the flesh, like a deliberate attempt to erase all identity. The coroner, a renowned professional, refuses to examine the body alone. He will require the presence of 2 witnesses. His medical report will be brief, too brief. Unexplained death. No identifiable cause of death. Ritual decay? Then, in a handwritten note that he would never officially deliver, he wrote a sentence that his wife would find a few days later in his wallet. She didn't die here. Something brought her back. Next to the body, under a displaced wooden board, the police found a small object wrapped in cloth, a hearing aid for children, with the initials IL hand engraved on it. None of the children were officially deaf. But this device is modified, strange. It looks like an amplifier, designed for hearing that beyond the human threshold. Acoustic analysis will reveal that the device is calibrated to capture localized waves at frequencies associated with certain seismic or spiritual phenomena. Since this discovery, no one enters the house alone anymore. Even journalists are staying away. Something has gone too far. And Magdalena's death, instead of providing answers, raises a single question. Who, or what, sent this back as a message? 3 days after the body was discovered, a civil guard technician returned to the Luján estate with a simple mission: to retrieve the old surveillance footage installed around the house. At the time, a rudimentary analog system covered every corner of the property. He simply wanted to archive it, but what he discovered would change everything. Cassette number 3, the one facing the rear panel, contains an unlikely sequel. It's 2:37 in the morning. Everything is frozen. But in the distance, in the courtyard, we can see a blurred silhouette, sitting. No child, no adult could have been out at that hour, especially with the recent disappearance. Yet the form remains there for 42 minutes. Stopped. Almost too still. Then, suddenly at 3:19 a.m., the camera goes haywire. A shrill hiss saturates the audio. The technician hears it repeatedly and decides to call a sound specialist. The latter activates spectral analysis and discovers the unthinkable. The whistling is not random. It is a sound pattern cyclic, almost musical, like a coded frequency. When he slows down, we hear voices. Whispers. Children. They repeat the same phrase over and over, almost inaudibly. Sometimes I had. Sometimes. Another, shorter video shows an interior shot of the kitchen. A static shot, nothing unusual. But as you scroll through the image frame by frame, you see a fugitive man slide to the bottom. However, the door is locked from the inside. Investigators thought it was a faulty magnetic tape, until one detail chilled the entire police station. In one photo, just one, a hand appears, glued to the window, like a child trying to get in. But the fingers are too long, too thin. And above all, the hand is facing down, palm of the hand facing outwards. Nails resting on the glass as if the anatomy itself had been inverted. After this discovery, all tapes are sealed. An agent, after seeing everything, left his post the next day, leaving this note on his desk. We're not looking for children. We're looking for reflections. Since that day, no one has dared to watch tape number 7. The one they say captured something inside the house, the exact night the children disappeared, but who rewrites itself with each reading. It's no longer a recording. It's a mirror. The case is bogged down. No concrete leads, no witnesses. So, authorities do what is only done as a last resort. They search the historical archives. Those of the city, the church, the diocese. They track the Lujans down to 19th century, when the property was acquired by Ignacio Luján, a wealthy landowner from the north, fleeing a family scandal few remember. But as you scratch, a frightening pattern emerges. Every 33 years, a strange event strikes the lineage. Always around May 11th. Always in this region. In 1928, 3 Luján children, distant cousins, disappear during a wake on the same farm. Without a trace. There is talk of a light falling from the sky. In 1961, a sleep epidemic strikes the lineage's children. 8 children fall into a coma in the same night. None wake up. And in 1994, nothing should happen. The generation seemed spared. But it was at this precise moment that archives from the Santa Clara convent mysteriously disappear in an unexplained fire. This convent was once home to a hidden branch of the Luján family. An old letter, found in the false bottom of an old missal, is chilling. Dated 1861, written by an anonymous nun, it states, "They come at the call of the blood. Every time the moon is full and silence falls upon the 9th sun, they make the transition. They are not dead. They are reminders." The word no continues to appear in the files. However, in 1994, the last child of the Lujans was the 9th living child of the generation. And a disturbing fact finally resurfaces. An exorcist, sent to the region in 1978 to deal with a seemingly unrelated matter, jots down a coded observation in his notebook. Cerro de la Lamada, where prayers are heard backwards. This place is less than 3 kilometers from Luján's house. Access to it is now forbidden, erased from modern maps. But the elders still call it the place of return. The malaise is becoming immense. It's no longer about disappearance. It saw cyclical repetition. A silent pact, perhaps ancestral. Something the lineage would have contracted or suffered. And if the children had not run away, but simply returned to the call? On June 14, 1994, 42 days after the disappearance, a man presents himself to the provincial police. His name is Ramiro Valdez, now 39, a former member of the Civil Guard. What he says, he whispers, not out of fear of men, for fear of what might be heard through the walls. He claims to have survived the same thing. In 1961 he was 5 years old. His parents were part of a distant family from Luján. What he says is confusing, punctuated by silences and panic attacks. But one thing comes to mind with frightening precision. The night he and 8 other children were called, something happened, something that wanted to cross their bodies. It's not a voice. It's not a noise. It's a pressure in your head, as if someone were trying to think for you, imposing their images, their words, until you believe it's you speaking. He explains that the children were placed in a kind of circle, all lying down, with their eyes open but frozen. They listened footsteps, distorted laughter, and whispers that mingled with their own memories. They were no longer home. It was the same place, but upside down. Like looking at your house in a puddle of dirty water. Everything moved slowly, and there were things in the corners, too big to climb into, but you could look inside. He says he managed to resist thanks to one word, just one, that his grandmother taught him to pronounce upside down. An old name. He won't repeat it. He'll just say, that word hurts them. They can't get in if you remember it. But no one remembers. Investigators interpret his testimony as post-traumatic delirium. But one detail changes everything. Ramiro, unknowingly, describes perfectly inside a room in Luján's house, sealed for over 50 years. A room that even the police had not visited until the time of their investigation. Upon entering, they find symbols carved into the walls, upside down, and a name engraved on the main beam, RV, 1961. Ramiro, devastated, mutters one last sentence before disappearing the next day without a trace. They don't want our bodies, they want our memories. Because that's where they come in. This testimony, never made public, is now sealed in the ministry's internal archives. But an anonymous copy recorded this audio session on a tape recorder. This recording was apparently found in a box deposited in the Vatican. Months pass. The case is officially closed. Closed with no further action. The Luján family's case is closed due to administrative aridity. Unexplained mass disappearance, probably voluntary. No names are being investigated. No criminal investigation is being reopened. But in the shadow of official silence, tongues loosen and the killings begin. The first is her local Father José Alvarado. He opposed the dismissal of the case, claiming that some symbols found in the house corresponded to forbidden rituals dating back to the Council of Toledo. 2 weeks later, he was found hanged from the bell tower of his church, but the bells never rang. His face was set in a grimace, as if he were smiling in spite of himself. So it is Lucia Echeverria, a freelance journalist who published a short article titled, "What if the Lujáns hadn't left?" She disappears on her way to an interview with a former detective. Her car is found on a mountain road, with the engine running and the door open. In the passenger seat, a burned doll, identical to the one found in the house. The recorder in the back seat contains a 17-second recording. We hear only his faint voice, and then the whisper of a child repeating the same phrase 3 times. They're still there. They're underwater. Finally, it is a police officer, Javier Montalvo, who descends into madness. He participated in the initial investigation. Admitted to a psychiatric hospital after having attempted to tear off the ears, he wrote day and night, on the walls of his cell, a series of incoherent numbers, distorted children's drawings, and one word, always the same. Reversal. Other incidents occur, but they are classified as accidents or suicides. However, they all have one thing in common. They involve people that having consulted Luján's case file or entered the house. The village of São Miguel do Sol, where the house used to stand, is now deserted. They say children are born there without crying. They say mirrors don't reflect the night, and that on the winter solstice, a light comes on briefly in the old house, although electricity has been cut off since 1994. The region was nicknamed the Inverted Zone by local residents. Authorities refused to talk about it, but in certain esoteric circles, another name circulates, whispered like a curse. The Mirror family. And in some versions it is said that the Luján family never disappeared. But she look, always, through reflection, hoping that we open up again to a certain door. No one had noticed this detail, until a young archivist, Matthew Ruiz, in charge of digitizing old local police files, comes across unlisted VHS tape. No labels. No mention in the records. Curious, he inserts the tape into a dusty device. The screen crackles. The image jumps. Then a poorly framed still shot of Aslan which he immediately recognizes, the one in Luján's house. There is no sound, but in the video we can clearly see the whole family, sitting, perfectly still, staring into the camera lens. The father, erect, arms crossed. The mother, frozen smile. Children, hands on knees. All eyes on the camera. And suddenly, a movement. In the background, behind the glass of a door, a figure passes quickly. Then returns. Then stop. We couldn't make out his face. Just a distorted reflection, almost human. Then the video skips again. And we find the same scene, but this time, the room is empty. Completely. Except the doll, placed in the center of the room, on a chair. She looks at the camera. And on the audio tape, a muffled voice whispers. It wasn't them who left, it was us who were forgotten. Traumatized, Mateo alerts his superiors. But when they come to review the video, the tape contains nothing. Just a black strip, 47 minutes of blank screen. No trace of the scene. No evidence. A few days later, Mateo resigns. He leaves a short, hastily scribbled note. Look closely at family photos, sometimes they're still there. And indeed, internet users claim to have seen Father Luján again in recent photos taken miles away. Or the silhouette of one of the children, blurred, in the reflections of a window. But the most disturbing thing, this is a video posted anonymously in 2017 on a private forum. A 10-second sequence, filmed in a shopping mall. In the background, a girl walks alone. She holds some melted rag doll. And looked directly into the camera. Then she smiled. Luján's house was walled in 1998. The mayor at the time, under pressure from the population, signed a municipal decree, a formal ban on entry, whether day or night. And yet, some claim to have seen a red light flashes behind the curtains years later. Others speak off whisper-sheared while riding the bike, as if an argument were dragging on within the walls. But it is above all thebbards which raise questions. No one flies over the house. Even birds of prey fly around it. In 2003, a group of urban explorers breached a section of the outer wall in an attempt to enter. They were unable to get past the threshold. Their video, which became famous on underground forums, shows only a shaky scene. But in the last few seconds, we can clearly hear a voice whispering into the ambient microphone. It's not over yet. She's still listening. Even stranger, the floor tiles look like deformed, as if something under the house had begun to grow, to twist, to breathe. Some believe that an ancient well, sealed in the 19th century, lies beneath the foundations. A well around which the first stones of the house were laid. But no one has ever been able to locate him. Or rather, nobody wanted Toto say where is he. Today, the building still stands. The walls are cracking. The windows are blind. But if you get closer, some say you'll eat a strange warmth, gentle, but intrusive. As if something was beneath the surface was waiting to be woken up. And sometimes, very rarely, a doll appears on the steps. Placed there, straight away, with a note hanging around his neck. There are still some missing.